Good afternoon, YouTube. Hope you guys are having a wonderful start to your Monday here, October 13th, 2025. And we've got a lot of things to talk about today. When I mean talk about, severe weather is on the return in usual spots and unusual spots. We've also got the threat for another tropical system off the coast of Africa over the next couple days. We're going to be watching that wave for a good amount of time as it could head towards the Caribbean Sea, and then options at that end go in many different directions. So we're going to break this forecast down, talk about that. We're going to spend most of the time on today's severe weather because we were kind of waiting to see how the tropics are going to unfold. So until we get more data on that, it's going to be more limited to severe weather. And we are going to be more than likely in severe weather coverage mode a couple days this week, and then going into next week, it looks to also be possible. So we're going to start to ramp off the dust off the old streams, and we're going to get back out there and start doing it for you guys here as always. So make sure y'all are prepared for fall severe weather season anywhere, because severe weather can happen anywhere during the fall, mostly in the Midwest, Ohio Valley, and Southeast, where we see those troughing patterns eject at. But something to make note of if you're in the high plains or even up in the Northeast, sometimes things can happen. So let's break down the forecast and kind of talk about what's going to be happening here for today. And we do have satellite imagery up here right now, and you can see newly informed tropical storm Lorenzo has formed last night to this morning and is now moving off to the northeast here, northeast here pretty slowly. This system's going to recurve out to sea. I'm not expecting any issues with that system there. We are also still watching this little coastal low off the east coast here as well. This system will start to move to the east here as we go through the next day or two, and then a little frontal boundary back down here into the Caribbean that could try and spark a little low to develop down here. I've seen some ensembles show it very low members right now, so the guidance on there's something actually developing down here this week, not really high, but you never know. It's the tropics, things can happen weirdly. And then we do have another system that's coming off behind Lorenzo that's going to be our main wave we're going to have to watch. That could push its direction westward here as we go through the next couple of weeks. So really, and outside of that though, the tropics are going to start to more than likely quiet down after we enter the first potential week of November. So lots of things to kind of keep in mind there as we go through the next couple of weeks. Here's a look at the National Hurricane Center here this afternoon. You can see Tropical Storm Lorenzo is the only thing that we have on going out here. I do expect the National Hurricane Center to highlight something in this general fashion here in the next 18 to 24 hours here, maybe a little bit later than that, just depending on when they do it. But we are going to get a new area to watch here at some point here in the not too distant future if the ensembles and the guidance continues to trend in favorable support of a system heading this direction by next week. So these long tracking waves we typically watch for a good 10 to 14 days before they start to pose a threat to any land masses. That's going to be how this system works out as well. And then after that, like I said, really not sure on what's going to happen as we go into the month of November there. But other than that, a pretty blank board here. We'll keep you guys updated if anything changes there. And then taking a look at the Eastern Pacific, another little area to watch here off the coast of Mexico. This system will work its way westward. But outside of that, really a pretty quiet time frame here as we enter into the middle of October. Now we do take a look at those ensembles here and what's going to be happening over the next couple of days. And you can see where the GFS ensembles, this is the new updates coming in right now. A little bit less guidance developing the system in the short run, but in the long-term distance, by the time we get towards next Sunday and Monday, you can see most of the ensembles do take this system and try to develop here on the GFS run. And then you've got some split taking this toward the Yucatan, some taking this up towards the Cuba area, some do take this out to sea. So a split kind of question mark here on where this system is going to go if it develops, if it hangs on once it gets into the Caribbean Sea late at the end of this coming up weekend. So we've really got about 7 days to watch this before any land interaction really starts to kind of be an issue here, whether that be the Leeward Islands, Puerto Rico, anywhere outside of that. And then the United States would be a long run. If we get past that point here and this were to head toward the United States, it would be the last week of October going towards Halloween. So something to make note of here. Really not too sure on what's going to happen with the system yet. We'll keep you guys updated on that there. And then here, the European ensembles, a lot more bullish overnight last night. We'll see what the afternoon run does today, but more of a grouping on a further west track. Some do take this further to the northwest, some take this out to sea, and then some take this straight west. The European dermatistic run actually takes this into Mexico here in Central America and has no interaction with the United States. The GFS takes a Cat 5 hurricane up into the east side of Florida, which would make sense because it's the GFS model. So a lot of things to watch here. And we can see Lorenzo kind of doing a weird loop-de-loop fashion here. We'll just watch that and see what happens there. But other than that, really not a lot of tropical activity outside of those two systems there. We'll keep you guys updated on that, and I'll have a video tomorrow talking about the new runs, and we'll have a live stream as well this evening showing what's going to be happening with that as well. So we'll keep you guys updated if anything were to change there. Taking a look at the Storm Prediction Center, this is going to be our main topic of discussion over the next couple of days here. We do have a marginal risk, a double marginal risk today for Phoenix, Arizona, back down towards Tucson. You guys are going to be in the threat for wind and hail today, and then a brief little isolated tornado threat this evening after midnight tonight through the overnight hours down here towards Santa Barbara, California here. Yes, you guys do have a little severe weather threat. We have an upper level low that's going to be working in moisture and a little bit of instability tonight into tomorrow. Could have some wind out there at 60 plus, some small hail, and then maybe a brief tornado. But tomorrow seems to be the big day for California. We actually have a 2% tornado risk tomorrow for Los Angeles, California. You heard that correct, folks. Los Angeles in the middle of October. That 2% tornado threat being working out there with a low-level jet around 50 to 60 knots there tomorrow. We'll also have the threat for some instability. Some low-top supercells could form. We can easily get ourselves a little tornado risk tomorrow, and we'll be on standby to cover this if anything were to happen. Outside of that, wind threat at 5% for winds up to 60 miles per hour, and that hail threat at 5% for hail 1 to 2 inches in diameter. We get today 3 outlook here for your Wednesday. We do have a marginal risk, a double marginal from New Mexico up to southern Colorado, and then another marginal risk back up here toward eastern Wyoming, south central portions of Wyoming here, or not Wyoming, getting into south central portions of South Dakota, western Nebraska, and northern Colorado for a wind and a hail threat. And then we don't have anything quite yet highlighted on day 4 through 5. But for the first time in over 2 months, we have a day 6 outlook. Correct, guys. You're not seeing this. We are seeing a day 6 outlook here from the Storm Prediction Center for a severe weather event on Saturday coming up. And that does include western Kentucky, including myself, southwestern Indiana, south central portions of Illinois, southeastern portions of Missouri, and then pretty much the whole state of Arkansas, eastern Oklahoma, northeast Texas. And this risk zone can get larger. It can shrink over time as we get closer to the event and nail down the details on what's going to happen. Right now, the Storm Prediction Center has set all modes of severe weather are possible. If you're in that yellow risk zone, there will be also a marginal risk associated somewhere outside of this here, and then we'll have that slight risk and maybe even an enhanced risk at some point here as we go toward the weekend. So something I'm watching very, very closely here, and then potentially a low and severe weather threat as this trough shifts to the north on Sunday. We could see some severe weather up here in eastern Ohio, western Pennsylvania. We'll keep you guys updated if anything changes on that, but severe weather is about to make a big, big return, and it's going to hang around, guys, for much of the fall and winter season. So buckle up here as we get ready to cover multiple days of severe weather going in toward the week here, and eventually next week as well, where things could start to change. Here's the timeline of those showers and thunderstorms and low tornado and wind and hail threat this afternoon. Here you can see southwestern California. Those storms moving in later on this afternoon, a wind and a hail threat, maybe a brief isolated tornado threat in there, less than 2%, but not 0. Just keep that in mind there. I know you guys aren't probably thinking about that if you're in California, but something to be mindful of there. But with those storms, we'll continue to work through the overnight hours, and then by tomorrow, we'll start to see some instability down here towards Los Angeles, and that could allow for a couple of storms to become tornadic in the afternoon hours tomorrow through the early morning to afternoon hours across Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, southwestern Cali. You'll have to watch out there for an isolated tornado, wind, and hail threat, and then those storms will be out and gone by Tuesday night into Wednesday morning, and we'll see that low move off to the northeast, where we'll see that day 3 outlook start there, and we'll have more of a timeline on that tomorrow. Now, what I want to spend most of the time talking about is what is getting ready to happen with our upper level jet stream. A lot of things getting ready to happen. Here's our big dip in the jet stream, finally starting to see these major troughing patterns set up, and that is favorable for winter weather on the northern side most times not, and severe weather on the southern side, and then warm and cold air kind of clashing here. You get a robust storm. It happens more times than not. We do need to make note we have a high pressure down here in Texas, a weak high pressure. This is actually going to lift to the northeast, and depending on how this trough evolves over the next couple of days here and amplifies, we're either going to get a pretty decent severe weather setup, or we're going to have a low and severe weather setup, and that's really dependent on instability and timing of the trough ejection here. And right now, the European model handling this pretty well with the trough ejecting across the Rockies on Wednesday into Thursday with a ridge down south that does have this low moving up to the northeast, but the trough amplifying because we are going to basically have a secondary forcing mechanism behind this little shortwave trough, or this main feature here. We're going to have a back-end trough come in. It's going to help align our main severe weather setup for Saturday. So this back-end trough coming in is going to help basically set up the wind field here, and we'll see that dip in the jet stream kind of merge. We'll have an upper level low develop to the north here, an upper level low to the south. And where do we get those things to meet up at? We do have a pretty decent amount of shear in and around that corridor here where that level 2 slight risk is at for Saturday into Saturday evening, and eventually into Sunday. This will transition northeast. So this is the area that we're watching for severe weather both on Friday and Saturday. We could see a little Friday event up here from Texas up to Kansas and eastern Oklahoma, definitely possible, dependent on instability and trough timing and moisture return. We'll kind of break that down more as we get closer, but we are watching for the day 5 here and the day 6 potentially as we go into the weekend here. And then after that, we're not done. That trough will move off to the northeast, and then we'll have another dip in the jet stream, and this is the one I really want to watch. I don't like the way that this sets up. I know this is, about 200 hours out going into early next week, but we do have a pretty strong negatively tilted trough, and when you see a jet stream that has very high velocity winds like this in the upper levels, you think moisture return and you think instability, and that's exactly what the models are starting to suggest as we go towards next week. So I would be more concerned about next week's severe weather setup somewhere in this catty corner here from Texas up to the Ohio Valley. You'll have a pretty big string of moisture return once again, maybe some higher moisture return than what's going to happen this weekend, as well as some potential higher instability values. The GFS shows it a little bit, the European also showing it, so something we're going to have to watch here. And another thing we got to really look at there is that low level jet. We start to look at that with these tornado setups, and as we go toward the weekend, where does that low-level jet set up into Saturday and into Sunday here? Well, on Saturday, we do have a little decent amount of low-level jet pop up here, anywhere from 40 to 50 knots. And if something were to happen like this, we get a little bit of instability, some rotation in the lower levels, you're going to get a tornado threat, a wind threat, and a hail threat, and it's going to potentially try to come together here. So we're going to have to kind of watch and see how that instability plays out. If the instability increases, we'll definitely have a pretty significant setup as we go into Saturday, but it's all dependent on trough timing and the different factors that go in, instability, moisture return, all of that stuff, and we'll keep you guys updated on that there. And then just taking a look at the next week's trough, we were talking about that low-level jet. This is some stuff that we typically see during the springtime, but as we go into fall and winter, we see these troughing patterns set up. Therefore, we get stronger low-level jet returns with our troughing pattern. So this would be another severe weather setup going into next Tuesday, next Wednesday, the 20th through the 22nd. Just kind of something to put on people's calendar. Don't freak out or anything like that. It's still got time to change, and it more than likely will, but something we're watching here. And another thing we're going to take a look at is those dew points, that moisture return. Are we going to have enough moisture to work with this system? Well, the models do say on Wednesday and Thursday we could have a little isolated severe weather threat across as that first round of storms moves through. Isolated severe weather threat as high as the central and high plains going into Wednesday and Thursday. And then eventually by Friday, we do see a little belt of moisture here, a little skinny belt of moisture here. Could see some severe weather on Friday afternoon. We'll be watching that to kind of get things going there. And then Saturday, there is that moisture being strung up as far as Michigan almost, and this will allow for some severe weather. Once again, instability and trough timing will make a factor into this, but we definitely will see some severe weather, especially down towards Arkansas, Louisiana, southern Missouri, potentially western Kentucky, southern Illinois, southern Indiana into Saturday and Saturday night. That system scoots off the coast, and then we get an even bigger return push of moisture as we go towards next week. And this one could be more impactful if this were to continue to trend and verify. So something we're going to have to watch here. Dew points getting pulled into the 70s as far as Arkansas, 60s as far as southern Wisconsin and Great Lakes there. That'd be a pretty big system next week that we'll have to watch for. And then after that, we may even see more return of severe weather again into the following week. So lots of systems to watch, guys. And when we talk about instability as well, it's something we just have to watch for. How high are those energy values going to be for these storms to get into? We do have a little bit of instability on Wednesday there to work with, potentially on Thursday as well, down toward the south. And then by Friday, a little bit of instability to work with here. And then on Saturday, we pull all that instability to the north here. Model's still dependent on, is this going to happen or not? We'll have to wait and see with the timing of the trough. If the trough becomes more negatively tilted and pulls more moisture and instability up, then we'll have a better setup. If it stays more neutral / positive, instability could be an issue. But we are watching it very, very closely here. We'll keep you guys updated on that. Cloud cover and all that other stuff will have an impact on daytime heating and stuff like that. We'll get into more of those details as we get closer to the end of the week. And then eventually we see that surge next week in potential higher end scenario, maybe some higher severe weather down towards Texas all the way up to the lower Ohio Valley as we go towards the middle of next week. That timing's still way off because that's almost 7+ days out at this point. So we'll keep you guys updated if anything changes there. But like I said, guys, severe weather's here. It's here to stay. And, winter weather will also be entering the picture. We'll keep you guys updated on the tropics as always. I'll have a live stream here in just a little bit. Be safe out there, guys. Have a wonderful Monday, and we'll see y'all in the next one.